Good evening, Hell Rats. Welcome to Metal Mayhem ROC. I'm your host, Southern Cal. Tonight's episode, we'll be talking with IMMOLATION, some sick death metal out of Yonkers, New York. I'm joined by my Metal Mayhem ROC correspondent, Bill the Rager. He's very familiar with these guys, friends with these guys. Just real quick, when I met Ross at the show at the Abbey, Ned Maloney, if you happen to know him, Burning Star, he's 5-time champion of the Heavy Metal Hair of the Year. Ross, you got to get in. You can dethrone him. Ned's a good guy. I know him. He lives in my town, but someone's got to dethrone that guy and step in there. I was amazed. You got some sick hair. It was thrashing all around. Billy was telling me stories where he's seen it getting caught up in your bass and all sorts of shit. So
bass, band members, drum hardware, cymbals,
ceiling.
Oh yeah, I've seen it get caught in the ceiling.
Lighting trusses. It's the coolest mohawk ever.
It's very long. And let me ask you too, did you get married like 2 weeks before this tour started in 2023? Is that
Pretty
correct?
much, yeah. We got married the 21st of October, and the tour started shortly after that. Like, we left probably close to the beginning of the month in November, because Bob and I had to deadhead it and drive straight out to the West Coast, because the tour started in Ventura. So, that's always a joy when you're starting out on a different coast and ending on a separate coast. So that was fun as well.
That's awesome that you guys were touring on the Acts of God. That's 14 studio albums. You were touring in addition with Cattle Decapitation, Castrator, and Sanguisuga. Sorry about that. That's just such a hard one tonight. And I'm going to hand it over to Bill, who's got a bunch of questions for you guys.
Yeah. So anyway, give us a brief history of Immolation.
It all started back in 1988.
You did such a good job at this rehearsal for this. So.
Yeah, I sure did. All right. Well, again, we, I was in a band called Rigor Mortis back in 1986, which started, it's not to be mistaken with the Texas Rigor Mortis. We were death metal, and it was Rigor Mortis, New York, and put out a couple of demos in 86 and 87, played a few local shows. Then eventually, when that broke up, Ross joined the band, and we started Immolation, and that was in 88, and we did a couple of demos with that. During the demo days, we played locally. We traveled out of state, luckily meeting different friends and bands from the local area. And what I was explaining earlier is like through the network. Back then you didn't have the web, so we had the network was really your snail mail. So everyone, both bands, people that made their own music, as well as people that made their own magazines, fanzines, they put different ads and write to different bands or different fanzines, and everyone would cut up all their different paper photocopied ads and put them in every letter that they sent out. So when you'd receive a letter, you'd get a bunch of different ads from different people, and you basically write to all these bands and fanzines, and that was the network, and that became like the analog network as opposed to the World Wide Web. So it was a pretty cool time. And through that, you got to meet people and have pen pals from all over the world and get to know different bands from all over the world. And so it was a pretty unique time. And eventually we did make a trip in 1989 over to Europe. We went to the UK, we went to France, and we went to Sweden to meet friends over there, like the guys in Entombed and Nihilist, and the guys in Napalm Death and Listenable Records. And so yeah, it was that was a cool time, a really cool trip. And then eventually, after all that, we ended up signing to Roadrunner Records and put our first album out in 91. And we recorded in Berlin, Germany. So that was another first for us, going to Europe to record our first record. And then we did our first tour in Europe later that year for the first time in Europe in a pretty cool way. There was a German touring company, and it was us, Massacre, and Morgoth. And that was a really cool tour, because at the time it was probably one of the biggest death metal tours of the year over there. And the music was really new and starting out, and catching on then. So death metal was just on fire at that time. So every show was just insane and phenomenal, and we had a nice bus with crew and everything. So it was such a great experience. So everything leading up, going through the demos, first record, and doing that tour was was pretty cool experience for us, you know.
And it was
just
all
being-
downhill from there, right?
And then that was it. It was all yeah, exactly. It was like, yeah, and then it was just like, boop.
No.
No, it's
Well, you guys
It's
are
been a long
14,
ride, but that
14
was a- it was
studio
a-
albums in. That's pretty cool. I like
well,
that.
yeah, we got 11 albums and what, maybe 2 EPs. So, you know,
And
we're
then-
working on a 12th full-length record now. But yeah, it's a lot, you know. It's like you know, it's been a long road, but a good road, you know, a couple ups and downs in the beginning, but now luckily it's always been up in many ways. You know, we got great people in the band. The band's been, you know, solid for many years now. The music I feel we're writing is, you know, getting better and better, and we're all 110% into it. So yeah, I mean, no complaints after all these years, and at our age, you know, we're doing okay, and we feel pretty good about it. So
Yeah,
Awesome.
absolutely.
By the way, I had one of those rigor mortis demos back in the day. I don't know what happened to it, but yes, I did. I had
awesome.
Great
Yep.
stuff, man. I love that stuff. I
Me
was a
too.
fanboy back then in like 86, 87, because I was friends with I was tight with their bass player singer, the guy I ultimately wound up replacing, Andrew Sakowitz, and he was the guy. He used to hang out with our crew in Yonkers. We lived at different sides of town, and I was, you know, I was, you know, good friends with Andrew, and you know, one day he just popped out a demo. We were hanging out one night. It was actually me, Will from Mortician, and Andrew. And Andrew's like, "Hey, you want to check out our demo? My band just recorded a demo." I'm like, "Oh, I didn't even know you had a band." And then he played that decomposed demo for me, you know, standing out on the sidewalk in front of a Burger King back in like 86, 80, probably 87, because you guys recorded that in 87. And yeah, I was blown away. I was like, "Wow, dude, you know, sick vocals." I couldn't believe that was him singing. I'm like, "Wow, that's you singing?" I'm like, "Oh my God, this is what I want to do." You know, so yeah. And then I wound up, I went to a couple of practices that you guys had out in New Rochelle in the old days. Remember, Bob, Steve, and I would
Of
come
course,
by.
yeah. Ross and a bunch of other people we know and friends. We, you know, that would be like either during the week or on the weekends. They just come out while we're jamming, and we would, you know, we do some cover songs, we play originals, but everyone would just come and hang out, drink some beers, and
Yeah.
hang out in the rehearsal space we had in this. It was like basement of a building in New Rochelle where they had like a bunch of rehearsal spaces, and
Yep.
yeah, it was a good time. So we had gotten to know obviously Ross over that course of those couple of years, and then once this happened, you know, once Rigor Mortis broke up, then we, you know, we knew Ross played bass and he was, you know, trying to get in the band or whatever. And then it just made perfect sense. So that was it. And then initially he came in as the bass player and eventually became the vocalist as well. So it
Yeah.
was like surprise
so-
2 weeks
Right.
before the first show. So
Hey, let me ask you guys. I've done some interviews with bands in Houston, other bands in Chicago, and I noticed, and it sounds the same thing here in New York. All these guys in Houston, the band members would move about, not like leaving the band, but this guy would start a band and this guy would join from this band. And if you looked at the big picture, every band was connected. The same with like Spillage from Chicago, that they all know the guys from The Skull and Trouble. They all grew up together. Do you
Yep.
find the same thing was true in New York City? Like
Definitely.
with you guys mentioned Mortician,
Yep.
maybe Incantation or Suffocation. These were bands
Absolutely.
that were mentioned in same musical taste, let's say.
Absolutely. We knew all these guys back then. Will and I grew up together, so we were hanging out since we were like 13, you know, going to the arcade together and getting into extreme music together. Incantation, we obviously knew the Revenant guys when John McEntee was in Revenant, and our first show as Immolation in May of 1988 was with the Revenant guys. So that's the first time we actually met them, and we became fast friends with those guys right away, you know, because back then, when you found like-minded people who were in a band playing something that you were into, you know, you kind of, you know, you became fast friends. You know, it was few and far between back then. You know, there was only a small handful of us in Yonkers that were even aware of this heavier music that was existing, you know, but not in a mainstream form. You know, you had to really work for it. You had to write to bands. You had to, well, first you had to, you know, you had to get their addresses. So you had to, you know, you had to find a fanzine. We had a couple of fanzines back then where you had, you know, band addresses, you know, just like they would do with some of the mainstream press would have like a pen pal section, and it'd have, you know, people you'd write to. And that's how I got
Remember
into
that.
tape trading originally. So it was all about networking. It was like Bob said, it was our internet pre-internet. So it was, you know, you had to really work for your music. So anyway, I'm getting a little long-winded, but there was only a small group of us. So we kind of, when we met newer bands that were playing something that we liked, we became friends. So Revenant was like one of the first bands that we kind of, met, and we became friends. And from that friendship, we kind of helped McEntee kind of establish Incantation. I mean, we told him, hey, listen, if you want to do something heavier, he was looking to leave Revenant, and we kind of encouraged him and helped him out. And we were part of that first Incantation practice back in the day. It was Bob and I and John McEntee and Paul Ledney from who's now in Profanatica. But that was the first original Incantation practice, and we practiced at our rehearsal space in New Rochelle. They came down. Paul lived up in Connecticut. He came down from Connecticut. John came over from Fair Lawn, New Jersey, and we all met in Yonkers, and we went over to our rehearsal space in New Rochelle, and that was the first. So yeah, I mean, so we knew the Suffocation guys as well. I met Josh before, well, kind of right at the beginning when Suffocation was kind of getting their act together. I met Josh Barron back then, and we met the other guys later on, obviously, because we're all, part of the same scene. Like I said, Will from Mortician, I knew really well because we were close friends growing up. So yeah, so we all kind of knew each other and helped each other out. Later on, you had the Malignancy guys who came out of Yonkers. I mean, they were around from those days too, back in the early days. So they've been around for a long time. So yeah, so it was a tight-knit scene in the tri-state area. And then, eventually, as we started traveling, we met other people. Our first out-of-state adventure was going out to a Revenant show in Pittsburgh. And at that show, we met Don Krotzley from Nunslaughter. We met Mark Mastro, who started Rotrevor later on. We met Sharon and Terry of Decada, So just by taking these trips outside of our area, with friends and going to see shows, we met other bands and we started to network with those bands. So it was something that kind of, grew and grew from there, through networking and through friendships.
Yeah,
guys,
it was more of a grassroots thing back then.
It was,
You mentioned Nunslaughter.
Yes.
Aletheia is a band that we just been starting to play within the last 4 weeks, I would say, on the show on Monday nights, the live show that we do. Is the drummer from Nunslaughter, is he not in the band Aletheia too, I think?
Oh, I don't know, to be honest with you. I don't know who's playing drums for Nunslaughter now. I mean, they obviously had Jim Kanya before he passed, who was a good friend for many years as well. But sadly, he passed a couple of years back, and now Don has, obviously a different drummer in there. So I don't know who they have with them now. I think they're on the road now, actually.
Yeah, they played a show with Destructor in Cleveland. They were the headliner that night. There was also a band called Wicked, I believe, from the central New York area, Rochester area, that played. And Dave Just, I asked him for some comments on the show, and he talked about the drummer for Aletheia, ex Nunslaughter, I think he said, and how he just was fucking sick drummer.
Oh, okay.
And so it's, again, here we are connecting all the dots, and you got to love that and heavy metal for sure.
Well, it's it's a very incestuous scene in a lot of ways. Everybody knows everybody, everybody's kind of, a lot of people have jammed together and we've gone on tour. We've toured with pretty much everybody in this scene. I mean, very few bands we haven't shared a stage with, either in a festival situation or on a tour. So, it's great in that sense because you get to meet bands you're fans with, you make friendships, that have lasted us, 35 plus years with some of these people. So, it's a great world to be, a great scene to be part of, a great world to be in. You know what I'm saying? As far as I'm concerned, it's always been our home, right, Bob?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's good because you'll see people over in Europe that from here and vice versa, and especially like the European festivals. You go there and you see people just from all over the world that from either a band or just fans or whatever, just acquaintances. It's crazy, it's a small world. You realize how small it is when you start getting out there and then everybody starts culminating in all these areas, and we feel definitely lucky for sure.
You guys had said that, everybody was getting along on the tour. A lot of the pictures I noticed when you guys were posting them were with, it seemed like you guys were hanging out with Castrator quite a bit. Our
drummer Steve and the drummer of Castrator, Carolina, are, they're together. They're a couple, so obviously we spent a lot of time with them. We're very tight with Robin, like you mentioned earlier.
Billy knows Robin.
Yeah, but Robin's been a dear friend of ours for over 30 years. I mean, Robin's like legend in our scene, you know what I'm saying?
Yes.
She's such an awesome person. She does so much for everybody. You know what I'm saying? She's a super talented musician. I mean, she's worked on all sides of the spectrum, from management to tour managing and merchandising and actually being a killer bass player. She's in Gruesome, she's in Castrator, she's in a ton of other bands. She does like cover stuff. So yeah, Robin's just out there, and she always has been. But she's an awesome person, and we love Robin. So yeah, so we were tight. We spent a lot of time with them on the tour. But yeah, I mean, we spent time with everybody on the tour as well. Just that a lot of the photos you saw were us kind of like, wow, we just happened to hit this rest stop at the same time, so we get out.
Yeah, we meet up with them.
There was a nice picture from the Abbey. Right when you walked in, they had those two big high back chairs sitting there on the other side of the fireplace. That was a great picture. It was framed perfectly. Killer stuff right there.
Yeah, so we had fun. All good people, like I said. The Castrator gals and Kurt. They had one guy playing guitar for them that they had to get last minute. Kurt, who was amazing, great kid,
Long Island boy.
Yeah, a young guy too. But man, he was awesome, man. It was a pleasure to have him out, man. It was good to have him. He did a great job, I thought. The Sang with Cigar guys were awesome. That was our first time sharing a stage with them. And they were great dudes. I mean, awesome dudes. I met the singer at Psycho Vegas like about a year ago, But yeah, just fucking good dudes. And the Cal Decap guys were awesome. I mean, we knew Travis and Josh for many years, like the main two guys, the guitar player and the singer. And we had crossed paths multiple times in the past, and we knew them. But it was our first time actually touring with them, and man, it was a great experience, man. It really was, man. We had an awesome time, and I can't thank those guys enough for just treating all the bands, with respect and treating everybody really well and taking care of everybody. That's what it's about.
Yes, it is.
Awesome. So anyway, what's the current news with Immolation? What do you guys got going on? What are you cooking?
Yeah, we're just working on new music right now. That's our main thing. We have a couple of festivals in Europe during the early summer, and we have something planned for the fall that isn't announced yet, but you'll hear about that soon. But other than that, it's just working on new music right now. That's the main goal at this point, because just want to get another record done, and it's about that time. So
any particular date on that announcement that you cannot talk about yet? Is it something we could?
We have no idea.
No idea.
We don't know.
We'll know as soon as you do.
I would love to go back and
always
see
like,
you guys.
Usually when they all these tour announcements, they'll be like, you'll get an email like, okay, here's all the stuff where, tomorrow, 10 a.m., all right, you know what I mean? Like, so everyone kind of finds out last minute, as far as, most of the time it's pretty last minute. But we don't know yet. But,
is it a US tour or a European tour?
It'll be in Europe, which is good for us because we haven't done any touring for this record in Europe, because Europe, after, post-pandemic, touring in Europe is very difficult for foreign bands. Travel expenses, nightliner coaches, rentals are insane right now. Fuel costs over there, as you can imagine, are off their charts.
$9, $10, $12 a gallon.
Yeah, so there's a lot of factors that kind of prohibited us from getting over there up to this point. So we're finally, at a point now where we'll be able to do something substantial over there at the end of the year and get in front of some people, which is kind of what we've been hoping for. So it was worth the wait, and when the announcement's made, I think everybody will agree it's a perfect fit for us.
Cool.
And we're also planning on stuff for Europe next year as well, just to get back over there. And hopefully by that time we will have the new record finished and out, and all will be right with the world.
Right on. So you guys all live separate from each other. How does the writing process go? Do you guys share files with each other, or do you send each other, I got an idea, I got a riff? Pretty much. I mean, what I'll do is I'll get a bunch of riffs together with drums, and I just work on different parts on my computer. And then, Alex will send me a couple of riffs here and there as well. And basically, I take anything I have and I
put it on a timeline, and I just wait until I feel there's something that's, will work as a main basis for a song, and then I start putting stuff together. It's an interesting process, and it's always very hard to get started, to be honest. But once I get started, you're basically building a riff, and then from the riff, you're trying to build a song, and then once you get your first song, now you're trying to build an album. So it just becomes a bunch of parts slowly coming together and finding their way, and basically once I'll have a song, I'll have it complete from beginning to end with drums and sometimes overlays and solos, everything except for vocals. And then, pretty much finished the way I feel. Like before I present it to anybody, I want to feel like, okay, this is a song. This is it, so I don't do too much where I'm sending like, Ross, of course, I'll send him a couple of riffs or whatever. I might be like, oh, this is really cool. Check this out, or just to check on some stuff. But ultimately, I'd really try to keep everything to myself until I have like a full thing. And then once I have a full song, then I'll send that out to the guys and, see what the consensus is. And then we go from there. But
yeah,
Cool.
yeah,
I mean,
that's how that works. Pretty much.
for the most part, though, I mean, once Bob's comfortable with something and he's comfortable to share it with us, it's usually at a good point. If it needs tweaks, it's usually minor stuff like, hey, let's extend this part, or let's shorten this, or maybe we need something here or whatever. But it's usually minor stuff. I mean, when he delivers something to us, it's usually, how it's going to be. I mean, and he'll record, both guitars. He'll record, he'll program drums, so you have kind of like an idea of how the song moves, and how the tempos are, which is a good it's a good guide for Steve. When our drummer Steve gets that demo, he kind of has something to build on. He has the tempos. He knows, one thing that we found in the past, like before Bob used to program drums, it was always very difficult for the drummer to kind of understand what the guitars were doing and how we needed that part to play out. Now that Bob's able to kind of lay down the tempos and give Steve an idea of, okay, here's how the riff goes. This is where it starts. This is where it ends. This is kind of the speed I'm looking for this part. This is what I'm going for. It's easier for Steve to understand. And then he takes it from there, and then he adds on and he builds from there. He adds all his fills and embellishments. As you know, our drummer is very unique with his usage of cymbals. He's got a ton of cymbals, and he creates his own little, world within the drum beat with the cymbals, which is very cool. So, once he has that kind of demoed version that Bob sends out to everybody, then he could kind of run wild, and then the next time we hear from Steve, he's got drums recorded to the guitars now that we could check out, just rough stuff, but just so we can hear where he's going with it. And that's kind of how it plays out. A lot of back and forth at that point. We'll eventually go out to Ohio, where Steve lives, the three of us, and we'll rehearse, and we'll jam all the new songs like we did for this record.
Yeah,
and
once we have a song once we feel like, okay, we're ready on this, then we go out there and we'll try and do like a handful of songs at a time, and
sure.
A lot easier than back in the day trying to, go out there, express ideas, get it together, then drive out there the next week and say like, yeah, that was cool, but now we want to change this. So it was just very cumbersome to do it that way. Now it's great with the computer for me to be able to express, like, I'll try and make a part and put, a kind of tailor a beat to it that I'm thinking of, because to me, the drums and the riffs, it's very important what the drums do and how they work with the riff, so I'll try and get as close as I can to what I feel the best beats are. And then Steve will take that and he'll be able to build on that and then do sometimes his own thing. And it's just cool because it gives us a better idea. He can hear the riff, he can kind of hear my ideas. So this way he understands the flow and the feel of how the riff or what I'm trying to do. And then he adds his own Shalati swing on there. And then it's, then it really gets good,
Yeah.
But it's a cool process,
Yeah, it is a process though. And, we've gone through it, we've been going through it for like 35 years. So, we know the process well. We know what to expect. It's always daunting and it's, could be defeating sometimes. I mean, Bob will hit some points during the process where he's just tapped out, and kind of needs to take a break from it. It's understandable, it's not an easy process. I think it gets fun when the music's done and then we sit down and we throw ideas back and forth as far as titles and ideas for lyrics and concepts, and that's the fun part, to start developing that, because we riff back and forth really well together. Bob and I, like, we'll have ideas, and I'll write down my ideas and my stuff, and then send it to Bob, and he does the same thing, and then we tweak it. So that's when it gets fun, because it's not all on Bob.
Well, it's like it when you're writing music from thin air, it's tougher for me, because then, we've had besides the last, the last record we did pretty good on. Ross and I were doing what we normally would do in the studio. We did weeks ahead of time, so when we were in the studio, we only had to write about 2 or 3 songs tops. But like back in the day, it would be like we wait till we're in the studio for 2 weeks recording everything, and that's when we start writing lyrics. So it was insane. But the point is that that's something you can do right on the fly. Literally, we could, change a line when Ross is actually recording the vocals and be like, oh, you know what, this will work better. And then he'll go and do that, and it'll, be better.
Yeah.
So you could do last minute stuff with that, and it's more spontaneous. Whereas the music, you have to get that down. You have to get it down with everybody. It's got to be where it needs to be. So that's why the vocals and the lyrics are kind of fun, because you can really, just kind of like shoot stuff around and change stuff around a lot quicker. And there's not the stress. I mean, it's a little stressful, but it's not as much stress as the music, because the music's already done, with the lyrics. You just kind of throw stuff around until you feel like, all right, that's it, and then you could walk into the studio right after that immediately, so it's cool. But yeah, it is tough getting started. It's probably definitely my least favorite part about the whole thing that we do is getting started. I guess
you mentioned Ohio.
tough.
I'm sorry, you mentioned Ohio and everybody convening in Ohio. Is that like a practice facility, or is it a studio, or a combination of both, where you guys go and record your demos? And
Steve and Carolina have a place there together, and it's awesome. It's just like a cool place. It's pretty much their own. They have like 3 rooms in there. He's got his drums in one room, she's got her drums in the other, and it's like a hangout spots. And yeah, I mean, we've done a lot of stuff there, from rehearsals to shooting music videos and everything else. It's just a nice space that they have, kind of right in town. You wouldn't know what it is when you pass it, because it's just a kind of small building, very no signage or anything. So you would pass right by it, not know what's in there. But yeah, he's got all his drums and all his equipment set up, and it's just easier, of course, because he's got all this stuff set up. We just go to him, because it's a pain in the ass for him to come to New York or whatever, and we're all in different areas anyway. So Ross is probably the closest. So a lot of times I'll drive up to Ross's, we'll go over some stuff like the night before, and then Ross and I'll head out there in the morning, and then we just fly Alex in, and that's it. We'll hang out for like 2 or 3 days, and just either when we have to rehearse for a tour or work on new music, that's what we'll do, And yeah, it works out really good.
Perfect.
Cool. All right. So we're gonna move on to our rapid fire section here. And,
Rapid fire.
Where were you on the night of the 29th? Go.
Yeah.
Actually,
this is it's 3 quick questions to you guys, and it doesn't need a deep thought or anything, just maybe what comes to mind. I'm going to start with the first question for you guys. And when you're out cruising around, you got to go get some new strings, or you got to go get some groceries. What's on your playlist? We'll start with Ross on that one.
Oh, right now I've been listening to a couple things. I've been listening to the new Spectral Voice, which just came out. That's 3 of the dudes in Blood Incantation, and they have a drummer singer in that band as well. So they just dropped their new record, which is really good. Heavier, more doomier, a little bit different than Blood Incant, obviously, but really good stuff. Witch Vomit from Oregon, they just dropped a new song from their upcoming record. I really like that band a lot. We tried to get them out with us when we did the headliner back, when was that, 2022? But unfortunately that didn't work out. So that's the newest stuff that I'm listening to right now. And then I go back and forth between the old classics, like I'll throw on like Defenders of the Faith, or something like that, or Peace of Mind.
Definitely.
Something like that, or First Nuclear Assault album, because I love all that earlier stuff or whatever, I'm just all over the map, as far as that. But as far as newer stuff goes, the Spectral Voice, the Witch Vomit, I love all the stuff from the Northwest, like, Cerebral Rod, and, obviously Blood and Cans from, Colorado, not quite Northwest, but, in that general vicinity. Mortuous is another great band, which is the drummer, Chad from Necrot. Another good band that I've been listening to a lot lately. Yeah, so just kind of all over the map with, trying to keep up on the newer stuff, because there's a lot of really good newer things coming out, which is refreshing for us. It seemed like we went for a while where there wasn't like, there was good stuff coming out, but I think the stuff in the last like 5 to 10 years is really kind of embracing that sound and style that we were very attracted to back then, and they've kind of, made it their own now. So it's really cool, and every tour we do, we're introduced to new bands, which is kind of cool. When we did the tour in 2017 with the Cavalera Brothers on the Return to Roots tour, Full of Hell was the first band up on that tour, and they weren't really on my radar. I wasn't that familiar with them. And after that tour, man, I love the guys. I love the band. I think they're a great band. They're just awesome dudes. So Full of Hell's another one of those bands that, I'm a huge fan of now. I listen to all the time. So yeah, it's I think it's cool for us, a band that's been around, for 30 plus years, to still be excited, and and still be into the scene, and still like meet newer bands that are kind of remind me of how we were. All these younger bands are very driven, and they're very passionate about what they do, and they're very knowledgeable. And I say this all the time, but they're very knowledgeable about the early days of the scene. Like, they actually go out and seek out the more obscure stuff and will listen to it. We realized that on that 2022 headliner that we did. We had Mortiferum with us, they're another great band from the Northwest, and we had Imperial Triumphant, which is more like black, avant-garde, extreme, just very very cool, unique stuff. So again, younger bands that I think bring a lot to our scene and have a lot to offer. So I'm all for it, man. I really,
That's
really.
awesome. That's awesome.
Right on.
How about you, Bob?
Well, pretty much the same, because we do listen to a lot of the same stuff.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
Other than the new Billy Joel, which I love.
Oh, that's great.
Amazing song, amazing video. I love it.
Great song.
And Hypoxia. I listened to the new Hypoxia, which is really good production. And
Nice.
I actually just shot a video in the middle of working on a music video for them as well. So I've been listening to some of their new stuff. So very
Another
cool.
killer New York band, so
Yeah.
a lot of good stuff,
Cool.
Nice. All right. So, Ross, what's your biggest musical influence? Like, what got you into
Steve Harris got me playing bass.
Awesome.
Maiden was like the band, Maiden and Priest. But if I had to mention a musician that kind of got me into what I do, it would be Steve Harris all the way. Steve Harris helped me understand like what the bass's role could be in our music,
Right.
I loved all the early Maiden stuff. I was just fanatical about Maiden, and still am. I still love Maiden, So that was one of the bands. Obviously Judas Priest. I love obviously Black Sabbath and Van Halen and all the classic rock stuff. But if I had to like pinpoint like a band or like a player that really excited me about potentially becoming a musician myself and entering this crazy world, it would be Steve Harris.
Excellent.
So,
Did you happen to catch any of the gigs in Rochester at the War Memorial, the Priest Maiden tours, either at the auditorium?
We saw both of them.
I saw. Well, back in the day, you're talking about, or recently?
Oh yeah, back in the day.
Back in the day.
The Priest Maiden tours.
Unfortunately, I missed the Peace of Mind tour because I didn't have tickets, and I remember they played Madison Square Garden on a school night, and I just couldn't get down there. But I did see them on the Power Slave tour. I saw them. They did like 7 nights in a row at Radio City. That's when because I'm originally from Yonkers. I moved up to Rochester about 7 years ago.
Okay.
But so I saw all my earlier shows were either in New York City or Long Island or Lamore in Brooklyn, where all the underground stuff went. But my first Maiden show was the Power Slave tour, Radio City, which was epic. And then Bob and I got to see them do a club show at Lamore.
That was
Just-
sick. Yeah.
just
That was
me.
a Seven Son record.
Yeah.
dude.
And they went under the
And-
name Charlotte and the Harlots. And
Yeah.
it was epic, dude. It was
That
What,
was
what
sick.
year was that again?
oh
88.
right.
88, I think.
88,
Yeah.
I think.
They
Yeah.
were
How
doing
did
a
you
whole
catch
bunch
wind
of
of that
shows.
show?
Well, I was a nerd, so I would call the Lamore hotline like once a week to see what shows were coming up, because you'd call up and you get the
Yeah.
answering machine and
That's
they'd
how
say,
you knew back then.
coming up, and they tell you all the shows that were coming up, and I'd find out about everything that way, and it was at the end of one of the messages, and they're like, and we have a special announcement. We have Charlotte and the Harlots, and right away you knew, doing a special performance,
Right.
and it was like wink, wink, and we knew right away, so we got our tickets, and Bob and I got to see that,
That's freaking awesome.
yeah, it
That
was
was
epic, dude. It was
Pretty
epic.
amazing. Yeah, that was, seeing them in such a small club. We were like,
Oh yeah.
that place was, I mean, they illegally jammed that place to the hilt, and it was like
Yeah.
just Maiden was playing. So you just sat there for like 2.5 hours straight until finally they raised a little screen in the front and they came out. But it was just so cool to see them on such a little stage, like 10 feet in front of you. It was like really, really cool. I mean, that was a cool experience. I'm glad we got to see that one.
Oh
Very
yeah. I
nice.
mean, we saw a lot of great shit at Lamore back in the day, talking about like mid 80s, we saw everybody from, Maiden, we saw Possessed twice there. We saw them Seven Churches tour, and we saw them Beyond the Gates. We saw, everybody there, Slayer. I saw Rain and Blood tour there. I saw the Hell Awaits tour there. Saw so much great shit. Nasty Savage, killer
Awesome.
band from Florida. They
Killer.
opened up for
Love them.
Slayer back then. Hallows Eve,
Oh,
At
yes.
War,
Oh, right.
Man.
Blood Feast, Whiplash. Whiplash would open up a lot
Yeah.
of the shows because they were like a Jersey band, so they
And we
were
were lucky because we had, you had Lamores, you had CBGB's in New York, you had
Yes.
Studio One out in New Jersey, you had Nerd Show, we had Streets. So and
Yes.
all these national acts would always be, playing. There was a lot of metal, to see back then, and a lot of clubs to see it at. And then eventually New York clubs would change to like the Limelight and then BB King's and here and there, but there was always a club or one or two clubs in New York always doing shows. And
Yep.
yeah, so we were very lucky to be in our area because so many things would, come in and out of here from all over the world. So, that was fortunate.
Cool.
Yeah.
Right on. And I caught a bunch of shows at Lamores between 87 and 88. But
Nice.
I missed that Charlotte and the Harlots. I heard about
Oh,
it the
yeah.
next day. I
What?
was like, are you
Oh.
kidding me?
What
Like,
did
I
you
just-
see? What shows did you see? I'm curious if we were at some of the same shows.
I saw Carnivore there a bunch of times.
Oh, I
Nuclear
saw Carnival
Assault.
there a shit ton of times. Nuclear Assault, of course.
Slayer, when Dave Lombardo, the very first show, he came back after.
That was on that Rain and Blood tour, I'm pretty sure.
Okay, were you
Yeah.
there? That was.
I was
a
at
sick-
that show. That was with
Testament opened.
yes,
Yep.
I was totally there. Totally, yeah.
Yep.
That was for Testament for the first album, yeah.
Let's see. I did see Manowar there in '87. That was
too.
freaking blew my eardrums apart.
Yeah. Was it the show where it was just Man of War?
Yes.
Yes,
Yep.
I was there too, dude. I was at
No
that
shit.
one.
That's so
Wow.
fucking metal. That's
I saw
awesome.
Man of
I
War
fucking
and
love that.
Motorhead play together too. They
Nice.
did a show before that. Both
Talk
of
about
bands.
loud and louder.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, we saw Motorhead, I think Chromags and Dark Angel at the Ritz, which
Sick.
was like Webster Hall now, but
Yeah.
it used to be called the Ritz. I
Yes.
saw Venom there in '86
Damn,
with
lucky.
Carnivore and Overkill. So
Sick.
I have, you guys have seen probably,
Yeah.
probably a lot of the same stuff. We're all
Yes, but Venom I
bracket.
missed. I missed Venom and I missed Slayer on that tour. The Hell Awaits.
Yeah.
It was Venom, Exodus, and Slayer, and Tokyo Blade was supposed to play too.
Tokyo
Yeah.
Blade.
Yeah. See, now that show was the Ultimate Revenge show.
Yes.
That
Yeah.
got postponed. The original lineup was Venom, Slayer, and Oz. Remember
Yes.
the band Oz?
Yep.
And Oz, when they rebooked the show, because I guess Mantis couldn't make it over or something. It was some kind of weirdness. So they postponed it. When they re-announced the lineup, it became the Ultimate Revenge show because Exodus took the band Oz's place.
Yeah.
And then it was the three bands. And I wasn't able to go to that show. It was a very disappointing story that it's kind of personal, not for me, but I won't share that one.
All right. Well, I was supposed to see him in Buffalo. We were there. It was sold out. There was like 2,000 people outside waiting in the freezing cold. And then they come out and announce, sorry, guys, show is canceled. We're like, what? Everyone starts
Yeah.
throwing beers and rocks.
Anarchy.
Total
Yeah,
fail,
it was crazy. But anyway, it turns out that supposedly Venom had a couple of underage women or girls from Canada with them, and so
Oh, yeah,
got-
that'll do it.
they got
Border
stopped at the
troubles.
border, and that was
Yeah.
it.
That'll do it. Yeah.
So
anyway,
Slayer
yes.
was like, "Yeah, we're not playing," and Exodus too.
that
so.
sucks. That sucks.
All right, Bob, we're going to start with you on this one. What is the one thing the most you would like people to know about your band Immolation?
That we're still here.
After all these years?
That we exist.
I mean, we'll go out on tour sometimes with like a Cannibal Corpse or, even the last tour, it's like people are like, oh, I never heard of you guys. So,
What?
So, yeah. So, hey.
Get that a lot.
Yeah. So,
That's why we're out
that
there.
we're here. And that's why we are here, is to keep showing people that we are still here. So,
Yeah.
Fair
whether they
Fair enough.
find out about us 30 years ago or they found out about us yesterday,
Hey,
as long as
look.
they enjoy it, that's cool.
Right.
You know?
Better late than never, right?
That's right. Hey.
Hell yeah.
How about you, Ross?
What do I want people to know about our band?
The one thing you would like everyone to know, the one thing, if you had one thing to tell everybody about your band, what would that be?
I don't know. Like Bob said, we're still here. We're still hopefully relevant. Come check us out,
All right. Well, before we let you go, tell us about your social medias. If people want to get in touch and find out more about Immolation, the new record that'll be coming out hopefully soon, tour dates, wherever, where can we find you? What are your social outlets?
We're on Instagram, we're on Facebook under Immolation, as far as I recall. And that's it. On our Twitter, it's all under Immolation, I believe. So not too hard to find, I'm sure, if you know.
Is
Go
there
on
an
to Google.
Immolation website on its own?
Yeah, we
There
have
is
a website.
immolation.info, I believe, is the
Okay.
Yeah.
and that's probably needs to be updated, but between that and the other socials, the socials are usually the safest bet because those are updated daily, you know what I mean, as far as just about anything that's going on. The websites, got to try to update that a little bit more, but there's a lot of information on the websites, or at least to lead you to everything. There's also that link tree, which I think you can get at on the immolation.info. I think it has the link tree on there, which sends you to all the other areas, you know what I mean? So
All right.
so that's a start right there.
Perfect. Awesome. Well, hey guys, best of luck when you guys get over in Europe. I hope you guys just kill it over there.
Thank you.
You have a new fan in me. I'm one of those guys that didn't hear about you 35 years ago. I heard
there you
about
go.
you 4
See,
months
that's
ago.
good.
Just blown away by all the bands that played that night, especially Castrator and
Yes.
Immolation for sure. So
Awesome, man.
And
Well,
they
thank
know
you
I
guys.
love you guys. So hey,
yes.
thank you
Thank
so
you,
much.
And
guys.
it was great you took the time to chat with us after the show. We got some pictures and stuff.
Yeah,
I
that
thank
was
you
awesome.
for that very much.
Absolutely.
And we hope to see you back around soon in the States on a tour, hopefully in a little over a year, maybe, or something like that.
Hopefully,
That would be
yeah.
great.
Yep. Next
Awesome.
year will be a busy year, so we're kind of working on that now. So
Excellent.
keep in the loop.
All right. Well, thank you guys for joining us tonight, Billy.
Thank you.
Always thank you for joining me. And
Thank you, fellas.
for Metal Mayhem ROC, I'm Southern Cal.
Thanks, guys. Pleasure.
Thanks.
Metal for life.
Thank you for listening to Metal Mayhem ROC. Check out our website at metalmayhemroc.com for information on podcasts, archives, links to all our live radio shows, and all sorts of info. Please like, follow, and share with everyone, even your non-metal friends. And always remember to keep it heavy.